Hello and welcome to another revision talk through, and this time I'm talking through Queen Elizabeth's era. I'm looking at her problems with religion. So use this video to revise your knowledge on Elizabeth and her middle way, looking at how she dealt with Catholics, how she dealt with Puritans in her era, and revise all that key knowledge. Maybe watch it a few times just to solidify that knowledge and that understanding. Then do look at my other videos for exam questions and to test your knowledge even further and develop your skills for your exams. Okay, so let's get to the knowledge now. So let's start then with the causes of these religious problems. So go back to the era of Henry VIII. Martin Luther is complaining about the Catholic Church. He's complaining about its corruption and it's all about money making. He also wants to have Bibles in people's own languages so that the Christian faith is more accessible to the people. So Henry VIII, who wants a divorce from Catherine of Aragon to marry Anne Boleyn. Catherine's getting a bit old, can't have the babies, so the famous story goes. So Henry goes to the head of church, the Pope, and asks for a divorce. This is denied. So Henry simply changes the church to Protestant and makes himself head of the church, and he gives himself the divorce he wants. So Henry's son Edward is also a Protestant. He makes the country even more Protestant as well by removing Catholic icons and Catholic statues and Catholic pictures from church services and starts to make an even more Protestant church. But Edward dies, and Mary, who is the daughter of Catherine of Aragon, becomes queen, and she is Catholic. She starts burning Protestants, and many Protestants flee England as she returns the country to being Catholic. But she dies as well. So Elizabeth, who is the daughter of Anne Boleyn, brought up a Protestant, then becomes queen. She has seen the problems caused by Edward, seen the problems caused by Mary, and she's looking for a middle way, which we call via media, to try and solve religious problems. We call this her religious settlement. So how successful was this? Okay, so what did the Catholics think? So to please the Catholics, Elizabeth had called herself the governess or governor of the church, not the head of the church. This therefore meant she was not claiming to be the Pope or a rival to the Pope. Elizabeth allowed Catholics to worship at home in private, maybe to do their own private prayers and confessions. But she said everyone had to attend church, but church services were designed to be slightly Catholic in some ways. Non-attendance of church would gain a fine, a recusancy fine, but the fines were very, very low. So if rich Catholics didn't want to attend church, they could do that, but they had to pay. So to please Protestants, she did the following. She appointed Matthew Parker an archbishop, as he was a Protestant, although he was quite a moderate Protestant. Church service would be in English with an English Bible and a Protestant-style prayer book, although a Puritan might argue, a more extreme Protestant, that a prayer book is not something they should have either. So the Catholics start to react to this. By the late 1560s, sort of 10 years after religious settlement, Elizabeth is under pressure by Protestants to make the church more extreme in terms of its Protestantism by removing lots of Catholic sacraments and Catholic laws that still existed. So the Catholics go into revolt, which is partly inspired by Mary Queen of Scots being in the country and partly inspired by the Catholic northern nobles being upset that they're not involved in the running of the country, not involved in the court in England. So Northern Rebellion 1569 obviously is the first time where a rebellion takes place and they try and overthrow Elizabeth to make Mary Queen of Scots the Queen. Obviously see the rebellions video on Mary Queen of Scots in more detail for this, but remember they are connected, and when you have a religious question you can connect to rebellions and vice versa. On 27th April 1570, further Catholic reaction took place with Pope Pius issuing his papal bull that Elizabeth was excommunicated from the church and called on all Catholics it was their duty to end her rule, so implying that they should kill her and overthrow her regime, as it were. So by 1571, the Ridolfi had organised a plot, obviously called the Ridolfi Plot, which was a plan for another northern rebellion supported by a Spanish invasion. Norfolk, the Duke of Norfolk, would support this and marry Mary. The plot was found out, Norfolk was executed. So the most senior Catholic in the country, Norfolk, is now dead, and therefore the support that he can offer Mary Queen of Scots has gone with it. Okay, for more on that, obviously look at the rebellions videos. So Elizabeth obviously reacts to this as well. So after rebellions in the papal bull, Elizabeth made laws harsher against Catholics. So in 1571, rosary beads were banned and recusancy fines were increased. And by 1581, fines were up to £20, and attending mass, a Catholic mass, was treason. So then there's another Catholic reaction, which is called the Counter-Reformation. So foreign priests, Catholic priests that is, coming into England to give services and try and convert people back from Protestantism to Catholicism. So the first one of this is the Catholic Cardinal William Allen sending over his priests from Douai. The first of them arrived in 1574. And the Jesuits also sending over priests, more from Spain. So the Society of Jesuits developed from the 1540s with training priests, and by the 1580s they were arriving in England to deliver Catholic masses and perhaps convert people back to Catholicism. So the famous Jesuit that really we could know about is Edmund Campion. So he arrived in the 1580s alongside Robert Parsons. Campion was very high profile, and therefore the government feared he might lead to some form of rebellion. The French and Spanish governments had funded the Douai priests and the Jesuits to come here, and so Elizabeth was keen to crush this if she could. The French and Spanish also had been supporting more plots in the 1580s, with the Throckmorton plot of 1583 to remove Elizabeth. So there was a great amount of threat at this time, so she had to react. Furthermore, the Catholics were causing problems by 1586 with the Babington plot. So a young gentleman, Anthony Babington, led a plot to place Mary on the throne and to have, again, an invasion, overthrow Elizabeth, and have a Catholic monarch set up with Mary in charge. Mary was found to be involved in this and was executed as well. Clearly, we're going to get some Elizabethan reaction here. So in 1581, she introduced recusancy fines up to £20, and attending Catholic Mass was treason, as already mentioned. Campion was found and arrested and tortured on the rack in 1518 and executed in 1581. 1585, it was treason to have a Catholic priest in your home. This was a response to Jesuits, of course, and Catholic priests were executed. You may be aware that Catholic homes would have had priest holes where they hid priests when somebody came to find Catholics in their home. Also, lords and nobles obviously would want to hide these priests, because if they were found guilty of having a Catholic in their home, they could lose their land and all their titles. Another reaction is considered the Babington plot. So Mary Queen of Scots is executed for this. So this led to more severe attacks by the Spanish in the Anglo-Spanish War. The Spanish Armada took place in 1588. So clearly this could be because Philip of Spain is angry that a Catholic queen has been killed. But there is also a bit of an argument here that the idea that Mary Queen of Scots can take over from Elizabeth the Queen has now died with Mary, so perhaps Philip could seize the throne more easily. By 1593, the statute of confinement of Catholics was introduced. This meant Catholics could not move for more than 5 miles from their home. So clearly, the middle way has not worked for solving the problems of Catholics, and Elizabeth had to be really strict with them and crush them. And in fact, it's the killing of Mary and perhaps the victory over the Spanish Armada that does a lot to solve this problem. So thinking about how foreign policy, rebellions, and how religion are all interconnected. Of course, look at my marriage video as well to consider how marriage is involved in it as well, because Elizabeth's lack of succession means that Mary can take over easily. So a huge amount of interlinking of ideas to think about. Right, so time to start thinking about Protestants then, and particularly Puritans. The first major event we've got to think about is the Vesterian controversy. Okay, it might have been named that in your textbooks, but essentially it's an argument between Parliament and the Queen about whether the priesthood should wear robes or not, and these robes could be called vestments. So in 1568, some Presbyterian leaders, Protestant leaders, refused to accept this robe because it's the type of thing that a Catholic would wear, and they accused it of being a popish style church. They didn't like prayer books either, because in the Bible Jesus did not say, go forth and make a prayer book. In fact, there weren't that many sort of prayers in the Bible really. So it's all part of a made up part of a Catholic church according to these Protestants and Puritans. Also, Jesus never instructed to go forward and make a church structure with a bishop, for instance. So therefore they didn't want that church structure either with bishops. So this led to Walter Strickland, a Puritan leader in Parliament, complaining that priests must not wear vestments, and this led to this vestiarian controversy, which Elizabeth closed Parliament and just ended the discussion. Parliament shouldn't be discussing these things, they should be discussing finances and things like that. So the next challenge was, again, a Puritan type of challenge, was prophesying meetings. So in the 1570s, these meetings took place, and prophesying is like preaching. So they became very popular with the support of the Archbishop, Edmund Grindal. But Elizabeth felt these were opposition to her type of church. She didn't really support preaching necessarily. She wanted quite a structured church. So Grindal was suspended from his job and the meetings were banned. So Puritans carried on their challenge, so separate churches started to emerge. In 1580, a new separate church was set up in Norwich, and it encouraged, again, preaching to take place. So preaching, if you're unaware of what that is, it's sort of, you give a Bible reading and then you're talking about it and you're explaining things and the messages of it, and you're teaching people about your ideas. So although this sounds maybe very important to religion, it's not something Elizabeth wanted in her church. In 1583, Elizabeth appointed a harsher Archbishop, John Whitgift, who had stricter recusancy fines for Catholics and Protestants that did not attend church, and he was obviously much more against the ideas of prophesying and separatist churches. So on to the 1590s, Elizabeth becomes even stricter towards Puritans. So many of the powerful Puritans in Parliament and in her government and in the court had moved on now. Walsingham and Dudley died before this time, and they were much the strong supporters of Protestants and Puritans. So without their support, Elizabeth could now really go after the Puritans because there's nobody to stop her. So a couple of examples then. John Stubbs had his right hand cut off for illegal Puritan printing. And in 1592, a London separatist church began, and its leaders, Henry Bower and John Greenwood, were executed. So Elizabeth was getting firm against Protestants and Puritans as well. So again, more signs that her middle way has been failing. She didn't do enough to help Puritans, didn't do enough to help Catholics. So generally, you could look to argue that her religious policies have not worked. Sorry to interrupt your video there. Hello, I'm the History Tutor, and please allow me to tell you a little bit about the service I offer to help you with your GCSE history studies. So do take a look at my website, thehistorytutor.co.uk, and find out more about things like tutoring. I can do one-to-one tutoring or small group tutoring with you and your friends to help you achieve really great results in your history studies. Also, I have many revision guides to help you. They're packed full of videos like this one with revision notes and revision talk-throughs. Also, with revision cards, everything is organised into blocks that you can easily read through and write through and memorise. But most importantly, I have tutoring videos on there, 10 to 15 videos talking through how to answer the questions. You can find some of these videos for free on YouTube. Do take a look, watch through them, subscribe, that'd be great. But also you can find more in my revision guides. So do follow the links in the video information to my Amazon channel and also to my website. Well, thank you for watching our video. I hope you found it useful for your revision. Do look over it again if you need to find out any more facts and revise any more knowledge. And do look out for more videos. And I'll see you again soon. Bye bye for now.